So that kind of stuff helped me glean lessons of masculinity, not just in terms of toughness, but how he handles betrayal, how he handles being slandered and defamed, something you know a good bit about.
I have a part-time job and being lied about. Yeah.
Yes, you do. I believe that you do.
And at the end of the day, I was, some years ago, I was kind of having a pity party. You never get, real good showing for those, so it was just a party of one. But I was feeling kind of like, shucks, people say things. And God spoke to me, and he always calls me son, and that's who I see myself as. God is my father, and I'm his son. And he said, son, you gave me your sin. Why won't you give me your reputation?
Oh, that's tough because it's hard.
Because I like my reputation.
That's right.
I'll give you my worst, but
That's
not
right.
my best. And
That's
so
right.
to be a Christian, you give God your sin. To be a Christian leader, you give God your reputation. And I'll tell you this, once you just sort of crucify your reputation and don't try and resurrect it, you sleep better, you have fun, your joy returns, because you can stop thinking about yourself and you could start thinking about others.
What's happening, my friends? John Lovell here, Warrior Poet Society. Thrilled to give you such an awesome guest, a surprise. Some of you will not like him, and I'm okay with that. This is a Christian pastor, and you should know that the Warrior Poet Society is not a Christian movement by any means. We have all kinds of different faiths and philosophies, and some people don't have faith at all, and they're atheistic or agnostic. I don't really care. The big shtick, though, is that you live for higher purpose. You're ready to sacrifice in the defense of others, and that makes you one of us. I happen to be an outspoken Christian, though, and this is a man who has been extremely impactful in my personal life for well over a decade. I've read his books, I listened to his sermons, and he remains my favorite living Bible teacher. And that's a big thing to say. Not only is he extraordinarily good at understanding and communicating Bible, but he's also extremely good at critiquing society in general and kind of connecting those things today. So guys, trust me, you're going to love him, or actually you may hate him. I have no idea. His name is Mark Driscoll, and here he is.
Good to have you, buddy. Yeah, I always say I'm a 1 and 5-star review guy, and that just means I'm clear. So I take that as a great compliment.
As I was preparing to sit down with you, I had all kinds of folks, and they were 5-star reviews of like, yeah, Mark Driscoll, this guy's awesome. Or it was like, how dare you even sit down?
Satan had a brother, and he moved to Scottsdale.
And are you that brother? You're...
I'm somewhere between Jesus and Judas. I'm somewhere in between.
So a fantastic answer. I really like that. And I recognize when people have fierce critics and they have just incredible fans, it means they're doing either really bad or really good. So you have some tyrant that was assassinated, or you have the best man ever, Jesus, who was murdered for being too good. And so anyway, I like that response. You ready to dive in?
Sure.
All right. So first off, how do you know that Christianity is true?
You've got to just literally land the plane at Jesus. So my whole journey started, I was kind of jack moral Catholic, didn't really know the Lord, got to college, seemed like every class had something negative to say about Christ and Christianity. Women's studies, it oppresses women. Anthropology, it oppresses native cultures. Environmental science, it's ruining the planet. Everything. And so I thought, I've got to figure out where I'm at. And as I studied religions and philosophies and kind of took more of an academic approach, even though my dad was a drywaller and I was more blue-collar scholar, but I started digging in. I was like, it really comes down to Jesus. Number one, did a guy live named Jesus Christ? Did he actually live? Number two, did he say he was God? If so, he would be the only founder of any major world religion who ever said he was God. If he did live and he said he was God, then either he's God or he's the most despicable, deplorable, damnable person who's ever lived in the history of the world.
Right.
It's all or nothing. Once you say I'm God, it's all or nothing. And so I had to come to the conclusion, do I think he's God or not? And that led me to the resurrection. And if Jesus rose from the dead, and if Jesus defeated death, then he is exactly who he said he was. And that would put him in a unique category in human history to where he alone made claims and proved them at that level. And so I think that the resurrection of Jesus is the most historically verifiable, ancient, major, epochal event in history. It's recorded by the Jewish people who didn't necessarily initially have a lot of enthusiasm, but they came to worship him. It is recorded outside of Scripture with Josephus, Pliny the Younger, some other ancient historians. And here we are a few thousand years later, and Christianity is the biggest movement of any sort or kind in the history of the world. And we're worshiping as Christians on Sunday because it was the day of his resurrection. And the question is cause effect. If Jesus didn't live, or if he did die but didn't live again, then how do you get a few thousand years of the most impactful, significant, transforming life lived in the history of the world if it's a dead guy who lied?
Right.
I mean, it's cause effect. You know, if I see a tsunami, I assume something was behind that. And you can't explain Christianity and the impact of Jesus globally unless he actually rose from the dead to support his claim that he alone is God. So for those who want to argue about God and faith and Christianity and the church, just, sort of clear the debris off the runway. The issue is, did he rise or not? That's the issue.
Fantastic. It's interesting. Our country seemed to recognize that because we were founded as one nation under God. And I wouldn't maintain like some would if like all the founders were Christian. I think
they weren't.
Yeah, great. The Enlightenment.
Thomas Jefferson sat in the White House, took scissors to the Bible, cut out all the things he didn't agree with, mainly the miracles, and called it the philosophy of Jesus Christ. So he reduced Jesus to a philosopher.
Right.
So, there were deists in there as well and some Masons and there's a mixed bag in founding fathers, but for the most part, there was a common understanding that there is a God who is over us, and there are laws that are unchanging that have authority over us.
Right.
Once you get rid of the concept of God and law, that's when you get anarchy, rebellion, chaos, and what looks like most major cities in America right now.
I see that. So we had a good bit of Christians there in the founding, and a lot of them are like, yay Bible, yay Jesus, let's make a Christian society. And the deists kind of like, oh, we didn't have a standard. Sure, Bible will be good enough.
Good enough.
And so it's on courthouses and 10 Commandments. And so really we became one nation under God. But really even more than that, we became pretty much a Christian nation.
I would say Christian-ish.
Very good. I'll go with that.
Christian-ish, meaning there was a generally universal held belief that the heart of the 10 Commandments was best for civil order.
Right.
So, not murdering people probably makes a better society. Not committing adultery probably makes a better society. Not stealing things probably makes a better society. So there were some who genuinely believed the Bible and loved Jesus, and others just saw the basic principles, especially of the 10 Commandments, as that is good for social order.
Right.
Now, we may not love Jesus and, want to, repent of our sins and receive him as our Savior, but those rules make a better society for human life and flourishing. So that's where you get kind of the concept of Judeo-Christian ethics and morality, because technically the 10 Commandments and such started with the Jews and the Jewish people in the Old Testament. So, I mean, that's kind of America's root system, and we've kind of moved beyond that.
Yeah, and that's what I kind of wanted to land at.
Yeah.
We've kind of moved beyond that indeed. We used to be one nation under God. Now we're definitely not. Whereas post-Christian societies you can really get, and God is not only embraced as, hey, one nation under God. Instead, God is really scorned. You don't really see positive examples of Christians or believers, and if they start that way in like a movie, they end up being like some
by the end,
awful villain at the end.
Total hypocrite, yeah.
Right, and so God's kicked out of schools and whatnot. It just looks like a hearty rejection of those Judeo-Christian values that had such a fundamental piece of where we're coming from. So as somebody who really is culturally astute, somebody who is really looking at society and connecting that to Bible, that's all I've seen you ever really do, how would you critique the cost of us moving on, and what does it really cost us?
So I always say, so I not only believe in God, but I believe in Satan. Mm-hmm. And most of your audience probably doesn't, but they do believe in good and evil.
Right.
And the question is, where is the source for that? if there's no transcendent source of good and transcendent source of evil, why is there so much pervasive good and evil?
Right.
And if there isn't a transcendent sort of source for good, how can you even say that something is evil unless you have something to compare it to?
Right.
And so those who have a conscience know that something is wrong in the world. And it doesn't matter if you're on the political right or left. You just look at the world and you're like, something isn't working. Right. Something is profoundly broken. And it doesn't matter how many dollars we spend, how many elections we hold, how many wars we wage, how many degrees we confer, how many prescriptions we write. It doesn't seem to be getting better. Human life and flourishing doesn't seem to be improving. Mental health, joy, peaceable relationships, social order. It just seems like we're up against this invisible force that's almost like gravity. It just always wins in the end.
Right.
And the Bible's the only thing that really makes sense of that. And it says that in addition to the world we see, there is a world we don't see. And that those two worlds impact, impinge, and affect one another. And so if you believe that there is evil, and if you consider that evil is personal, then what you would understand is God created the world, and then he has an enemy who tries to counterfeit everything that God is doing.
Right.
And so God brings order, Satan brings disorder. God brings truth, Satan brings lies. God brings life, Satan brings death. God brings blessing for generations, Satan brings cursing for generations. And what I think is interesting about your kind of your audience, and I'll be honest, not to be offensive, I don't really know what you do. I don't go on the internet.
Hold on, cut.
I don't really go on the internet.
Cut. Come on, man.
But from what I hear, I hike in the woods and I hang out with my wife and kids. And but what I sense is that you have a group of people who believe that there is right and wrong. They believe that there is true evil and that evil will not stop itself. And so good people, particularly men, need to put themselves in harm's way to stop evil before it damages those who can't defend themselves.
Right.
That's Jesus.
Yeah.
The story of the Bible is that there is evil, and it is attacking humanity. And Jesus Christ comes to intercede and to intervene. And he comes to end evil before it ends us. And he comes to end evil because it won't end itself. So I would say everybody who's, sort of maybe listening to this and shares your values, which I share completely, what they're really wanting is to get to know Jesus, because what they're really looking for is someone who is a bigger defender, who can win the biggest war and put all of this to an end once and for all.
So here's something that I've noticed. You said that Satan takes a truth and then perverts it and makes it a lie. And that's what he does. However, what I'm seeing is a divide that has really become wider and wider until it's a chasm regarding what is actually right. Because it doesn't even look like a perversion of truth anymore. It's like completely...
It's a counterfeit reality. It's a parallel universe.
Right.
And it's complete and total deception. I mean, I believe you, if you don't even believe in Satan, just ask yourself, who in the world would say that the criminals are good and the cops are bad? And that if we get rid of the cops, then there won't be any more crimes. I mean...
Let's protect the mommies and kill the babies.
Let's kill the mom. Yeah, let's kill the babies. That was the last election. It's like, hey, the border's open. Yeah, but can we kill the babies? Hey, crime is up in the streets. Well, can we kill the babies? Okay, so smoking weed and killing babies is... Really, those are the two pedals on our bike. I mean, where do we end up if we keep pushing those pedals?
I don't know, but I was just wondering if you wanted to comment on, hey, how did this divide get so big so fast? In that it's
education
kind of like
and social media.
The right and the left are now, they're nowhere close. It was like just if we went into the political realms alone, 20 years ago, a Republican and a Democrat could both want good for the country and disagree on the means to get there. Mm-hmm. And now it looks like the left...
Or they could even believe that there's a male and a female.
That would be fantastic as well.
20 years ago, Democrats were like, if you can write your name in the snow with your own urine, you're not a girl. They knew what the teams were. Now, we don't know.
But now it looks like the Democratic Party has been eaten by a radical leftism that seems to be anti-everything that I stand for, and it's such a dramatic opposite. I don't even know what to do with it. I don't know how we got there. I don't know how we got out. If they're anti-God, anti-country, anti-First Amendment, anti-Second Amendment, pro-life, which is such anti-gender roles, anti-masculinity. It's like everything I like and think is good. And everyone, 50 years ago would have just been like, yeah, of course.
Yeah.
They're anti that. And I'm
Sure.
like, how could we have possibly gotten there? What propaganda machine is that amazing?
Education and social media. So
Okay, I found you on social media as well. Is that?
Social media is completely, it's a brainwashing tool.
Yeah.
It just is. And, I get, like you, we get suppressed. I mean, you can't, the algorithms are not in our favor. I mean, right now, if we were taking, hormone blockers and, talking about our gender mutilation Christmas gifts to each other, we'd be trending. But
Absolutely.
we're not.
We'll never trend. They hate us. They hate us.
They do.
Yeah.
And so, but social media really does force feed that, because what social media lives on is fear and anger.
Yeah.
Those are the two driving forces online. Make you scared, make you angry. We saw that during COVID.
Yeah.
Whole generation now struggling with mental health and depression and anxiety. It's like, well, yeah, if you look at your phone and you think it's true, you're probably going to end up in a very dark place.
But how can you possibly look at your phone and think these things are true? It is amazing to me that people are questioning of like, today, you have elections going on, and anyway, I was called one way, and immediately I was going full speed, and then I'm like, wait, I've already tripped the algorithm in like 12 different ways. I'm like, do I want to pull that one in? Anyway, I don't know what to even... I don't trust what I'm hearing on news. I don't trust almost anything.
Why should you?
But it's amazing to me after
Russia.
I know it's ready,
like,
and this is what we believe, and everyone's like, "Yep." It's like ding. It's like Invasion of the Body Snatchers, where somehow they get everyone on the same page, and they just blindly and stupidly fall lockstep whatever the main narrative is. They don't question it. I'm like, how many times do you have to be utterly fooled? How does anyone have any trust for these things? I don't know if what I'm expecting out of you here, except to just beg the question, how is it possible this is still working? How are people this deceived?
I think at the end of the day, throughout the course of human history, there's entire societies that once you remove yourself and take a look, you're like, what the heck? Like, so Grace, my wife of 30 years, we were in Germany a few years ago, and we're in Berlin, and we're going to all of the different museums and all of that. And you're just like, okay, so they have, basically their version of Boy Scouts is kind of Hitler Youth. And the women are giving, medals by the government for having children. And it's this entire indoctrination that becomes sort of this complete subculture. And at the end, you're like, how in the world? I mean, we went to this one concentration camp where they did a lot of the medical experimentation and such. And it was just, it was a mind melt. So you've got the concentration camp where they're doing a lot of the experiments that contributed to modern society. And then outside of the wall, there was the camp for all of the generals and soldiers and those who were leaders in the military. And they lived there with their wife and kids and family. So Dad would kiss his wife and kids, and they had a pond and ducks. And they showed ancient old photos where they had like carnivals there for the families. And then the kids didn't know what he was doing. Dad would walk through the gates and he'd go put Jews in the furnace. Yeah. And then the ashes would fly over onto the park where his kids were playing next door. And you're like, how? Yeah. What that means is we are capable of greatness.
Yeah.
And it's good or evil.
Yeah, and meanwhile, we think we're so much better when we take stem cells from aborted fetuses and put it in our cosmetics and...
Well, the leading cause of death during COVID wasn't COVID, it was still abortion.
Yeah.
So the most dangerous place to be, was not at a public event wearing a mask, it was in your mother's womb. I mean, that's who we are. So
1 in 4 chance.
Yeah, right? And so at the end of the day, if we're going to, Jesus talks about playing speck, and it's always... We see a little problem with someone else, but we don't see the big problem with ourselves.
Right.
And that's the essence of Christianity. Before we judge others, we got to allow God to judge us. And what social media allows is a whole bunch of little godism where everybody just sets up their throne and then renders verdicts and judges one another. And it's just a little godism.
Well, let's do some little godism judgment stuff real quick of how does the modern young person or really misjudge or improperly understand Jesus and Bible. There's many who are so progressive that they think that in order to progress, we need to burn down all history and all tradition and throw everything out. If it's not new, let's get rid of it.
Yeah.
What do they not understand about Bible and Jesus?
Well, most people don't know the Bible, and they haven't read it, and they haven't been through it. They think they do, and especially the progressive Christians, the red letter Christians, I call them the woke joke folk, and the alphabet soup believers. They all misrepresent Jesus as sort of a progressive, social justice, semi-effeminate, homeless, hippie philosopher.
Who happens to agree exactly with their socio-political beliefs.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Right. And if he did, he'd still be alive. Nobody would have crucified him.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're just the sort of the homeless pacifist philosopher, you don't get the kind of rage that Jesus did. He was a strong alpha, and he stood up against political and religious leadership. And the heart of Christianity is that you're the problem, not the solution. And that's very offensive to everybody.
Yeah.
Because we like to think that we're the good people and they're the bad people, whatever side of the fight or issue you're on. And Jesus says, you're all the bad people and I'm the good guy. That ticks everybody off.
Yeah. I'm remembering probably a decade ago, you were preaching a sermon and you were talking about a white hat. What was that? Do you remember that?
I don't know.
If you look back in all human history, you said everyone's wearing a black hat like a bad guy, except Jesus, who's the lone cowboy wearing a white hat.
Yep.
And I'm like, yeah, that's probably that's probably a real good read.
There's only one person ever walked the earth that didn't make it worse.
That's great. That's fantastic. Yeah, that's a very offensive thing. If like immediately folks should hear that, recoiling and say, I do not want to believe that. But if you found some philosophy that perfectly aligned with what you wanted to be true, real life's not like that. Real life is filled with stuff you like and stuff you don't like. And if your philosophy only contains stuff that you like, it's probably because you made it all up and it doesn't meet reality.
Well, and today the primary ideology is you're a victim.
Right.
But the point is, the Bible says we're all villains.
Yeah.
And before you can, say I'm a victim of what they have done, you've got to say I'm a villain and here's what I've done.
Right.
And so the Bible is all about personal moral responsibility, not blame shifting, not excuse making, not passing the cost on to the next generation or voting for someone to fix your error, but for you to own your own shortcomings and failures. That's offensive because most people I had a guy come up, he literally asked me recently, he said, do you think I suck? I said, no, I know you suck.
That's great.
I know you do.
That's great.
We all start at a negative and we need forgiveness and change to make progress. And that's not something that is in us. It's something that has to be brought to us from God. There's nothing in us to save ourselves, fix ourselves, heal ourselves. I mean, it's a whole generation raised on self-help. And it's like, if you're the problem, how can you be the solution?
Right.
That's like, I have cancer, so you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to get more cancer to fix it. It's like, it's probably not going to improve your situation.
Nope. Good call. A moment ago, when asked how does society misunderstand Bible and Jesus, you said, well, they see a very kind of effete, hippie Jesus who's very passive, in contrast to really the biblical masculinity.
Dude was a carpenter.
Yeah.
Swung a hammer, and then preached, walked large, miles in difficult terrain. You have to be in pretty good shape. He's sleeping outside. He's probably eating what he can kill. And he's kind of like that show Alone a bit half the time.
Yeah.
He's just getting it done. I mean, 40 days, no food, no water.
Tough.
Totally isolated, And ultimately is hated, opposed, despised. He doesn't have security detail. He doesn't have PR campaign. He doesn't have an office. He doesn't have an assistant. He's getting it done all by himself. People are trying to attack him, kill him, arrest him, PR slander. I mean, you have got to be pretty tough to do what he did and to endure what he endured.
Yeah.
I mean, just even from a military standpoint, just the psychological. I mean, if you're a soldier, you're like, well, at least I have a base, I have a foxhole, I have a secure point, I have defensive mechanisms, I have weapons. Nothing.
Yeah.
Just one dude hated by everybody, homeless and on his own, and does not stop going.
Yeah. As a former soldier, I can look at the fact that he was tortured and he didn't cry out like he took it like a man.
Yeah, the worst
like,
torture possible.
Yeah,
crucifixion. I mean, the word excruciating literally means from the cross.
Yeah.
And so crucifixion started with the Persians. They would run a pole through a man, drop him in a hole, and just leave him. And then the Romans added the crossbar, and they found ways to maximize the torture. So this was state-sponsored terror.
Yeah.
This is like a jihadist beheading on YouTube. So the goal is you prolong their suffering for as long as possible. And I mean, the most sensitive nerve centers are the hands and the feet. And even in carrying the cross and falling, they say that would be the equivalent of a head-on collision in a car wreck where you don't have a seatbelt, you don't have an airbag, you're thrown into the steering wheel and you have a deep chest contusion.
Yeah.
I mean, and then we crucify him, and many men just they died because they asphyxiated. They couldn't breathe as they slouched on the cross. It's like he went through all of it, and he didn't curse anybody. He didn't defend himself.
Yeah.
He didn't cry like a baby. He just took it like a man.
Yeah.
And while he was there, he was talking to the guy next to him. You'll be with me in paradise. Hey, John, his friend, look after my mom. I mean, even as he's being tortured, he's caring for other people.
Help me connect dots of Jesus' example there to help everyone that's listening in to glean lessons on masculinity. One is a man should be tough, as you just pointed out, who could be tortured to such a dramatic extent and take it and not cry out. And not only that, you're making plans for other people.
Doesn't recant his beliefs.
That's right.
And, I mean, the whole point of torture is to get that person to recant their commitment or beliefs.
Right.
He didn't do it.
No. And then to forgive the people that were doing this to him.
He prays, Father, forgive them.
Yeah, I'm a follower of Jesus. I'm just nothing like him. It's like, ta-da! Been at it for 20 years. Not like him at all. I thought I'd be farther than this by now,
Yeah. No, yeah. Wait, just keep going. It gets worse. But just think about it too. If you believe as Christians do, that he is God and could have brought, an army of angels to war for him.
Oh, I would have brought the army. I would have done it. I would have been wrong, but I would have done it.
In that moment,
support by fire on the ridge.
You're being tortured, but you can call in a strike and you don't.
So
that's meekness, which is strength under control.
That's a great definition. You should pastor.
I should pastor a church.
You should totally pastor a church.
Yeah.
You should think about that. So I get that, hey, you should be tough, but something that would just absolutely, I've gone, nothing like that, but I've definitely gone through some awful, awful, painful, torturous things. But the stuff that jacks me up more than the physical stuff, it is the relational stuff. It's the mental stuff. It's the, everyone sees me and doesn't understand me and thinks that I am doing something terrible. Like you don't understand my intentions of the desire to clear my name and set the record straight. That would be so wildly hard for me. I want to be able to clear my name and then to be betrayed by a buddy
who's been ripping you off for 3 years and plotting against you
with a kiss. Like, bro. And
so he's a double agent.
Yeah.
Judas is.
So that kind of stuff helped me glean lessons of masculinity, not just in terms of toughness, but how he handles betrayal, how he handles being slandered and defamed, something you know a good bit about.
I have a part-time job and being lied about. Yeah.
Yes, you do. I believe that you do.
And at the end of the day, I was, some years ago, I was kind of having a pity party. You never get, real good showing for those, so it was just a party of one. But I was feeling kind of like, shucks, people say things. And God spoke to me. And he always calls me son, and that's who I see myself as. God is my father, and I'm his son. And he said, son, you gave me your sin. Why won't you give me your reputation?
Oh, that's tough. Because it's hard.
Because I like my reputation.
That's right.
I'll give you my worst, but
that's
not
right.
my best. And
that's
so
right.
To be a Christian, you give God your sin. To be a Christian leader, you give God your reputation. And I'll tell you this, once you just sort of crucify your reputation and don't try and resurrect it, you sleep better, you have fun, your joy returns, because you can stop thinking about yourself and you can start thinking about others.
It's tough. I want people to think well of me. I want to say that I'd love to skirt that line that cruises me into high YouTube analytics views. No one's downvoting me. Nobody's trashing me in the comments about my silly sky god with a white beard, or it'd be so easy to just skate that line and try not to. I think of The Rock. The Rock. Dwayne Johnson, of like huge following, never says anything to really upset him. Everyone loves The Rock. I'm like, but woe to you when all men speak well of you, for so they did the false prophets.
Yeah.
And so of like, man, that's not a life of substance and impact to me. And I'm not trying to get on him by any means. I'm just saying that's not the success I'm looking for.
Well,
not the success I'm looking for.
I was talking to a well-known pastor, I won't name drop, some years ago, and we were driving in his truck, and he's like, he's criticized more than me. And he said, do you want to know how to not be criticized anymore? I was like, do tell, wise one. He said, don't have anything, say anything, or do anything.
No.
I was like, well, then.
Yeah, no, that's too high of a cost.
Yeah, it's like, but if you have nothing, say nothing, and do nothing, nobody opposes you.
Yeah.
Because you're not a threat.
Right. No, I think I'm after 1 and 5 star reviews. So 1 and 5 star reviews.
Well, and so what I would say is like, just as for you, like, just don't go on the internet. Like, I haven't been on in over a year. I have no idea people come up. They're like, I'm so sorry. I'm like, I have no idea.
Yeah.
I don't know.
That's right.
Here's what I do know. I went home and snuggled with my wife. I did lunch with my kids, and I went hiking in the mountains with the deer, and none of them seemed to hate me. So I'm good.
That sounds good. You didn't say anything about guns in there, and that's a little unforgivable. Can you say something to my audience about guns?
So we're in Arizona.
Even just a hashtag yay guns?
So yeah, I mean, I think our state bird is probably a bullet, I mean, so,
good.
Yeah, where I grew up behind an airport next to a strip club and violence. And so most of the guns in my neighborhood were in the waistband of a kid holding up a 7-Eleven. And that was my first job. So that's where it started. And so it's really interesting moving to Arizona. Everybody carries a gun.
Yeah.
Like I don't know if you get one free with your driver's license. It's just part of your citizenship or what. Yeah, I've never seen so many people carry guns in my whole life.
Yeah, so your dudes behind the camera,
I know.
they're carrying guns right now.
All my staff is carrying guns. Yeah. My British friends come and they're like, oh, I was like, that's why we're not British, bro.
That was a smashing British accent right there. Can you do that again?
No, I can't.
It was
literally my British friend. He's like, everybody carries a gun. I was like, so we don't have to be British, man.
That's right. It's so ironic that they would critique that.
You're scared of the gun. That's right. Yeah,
that's right.
It has a long history of helping us.
Remember in World War II when the Third Reich was about to steamroll them, they didn't have enough guns, and they borrowed all of our second, third hand.
Speaking of which, can you imagine if today we got invaded like Ukraine? I don't think most Americans are up for the fight.
I think the dirty South is. Like, come on, boy. It's like each guy runs out no shirt on. I'm picturing the pants down so you can see the butt crack, but he's got like 12 guns.
He's like, I've been planning for this my whole life.
It's happening, honey. It's happening.
Yeah.
I'm ready.
I mean, but in most of your major cities, you're going to have drag queens throwing sprinkled cupcakes at invaders. I mean, we're in a pretty soft place right now.
Right, but it's just the major cities. There seems to be two different, completely antithetical populations. Yeah. Those in the cities and then those around the cities. And it seems like those in the cities of like people in Atlanta or Phoenix have more to do with people in Portland, Tokyo or Paris. And all the people around those big cities probably believe more like the rural. So there's like two different citizens around the world, it seems.
Yeah. I mean, that's what travel does. Anywhere you've got an airport, you're going to be connecting cultures, which means you're going to end up trending socialistic because you're going to be connecting globally.
Guys, I love Mark Driscoll. I think he's got a lot of wisdom to share. I really encourage you to tune in Sundays to Trinity Church online. They're right outside of Scottsdale, Arizona. Read his books. He's written a whole bunch of books. I read his Real Marriage book. We led a Bible study on it overseas when we were foreign missionaries. We also I read your Doctrine book, which was great, your Vintage Jesus, and a host of others.
Most of them are at realfaith.com. If you go in the store, I give most of them away. They're free.
Of course you would.
And if you want to look at kind of the Christian view of culture and what's going on, there's a book called Christian Theology versus Critical Theory. It's pretty short. But yeah, there's books in there about Jesus. You get what you pay for. It's free. Lower your expectations, but there it is.
Again, it should be no small thing for you guys who know me. Maybe I've built some rapport and you trust me to say this is my favorite Living Bible teacher. And so check him out, Mark Driscoll, Trinity Church. I'm so thrilled that you let me sit down with you. I had a great time. Should we shake hands or something or do that?
Yeah, there we go.
We did it. Guys, train hard, train smart. Stay free and keep searching for truth. Because I think that we should never, ever stop. As just a human, we have that burden to be able to press on and figure out what in the world is all this about. It's a worthy endeavor, and you cannot possibly live a life of significance without staying on that hunt. Love you guys. Take it easy. We're out.